Good evening, Ohio's News Center. Welcome to our severe weather multimedia briefing. I'm weather forecaster Nicholas Dunn alongside Ken McNatt. Good evening, Ken.
Good evening, Nick.
And once again, we are joining everybody for an update on severe weather potential for tomorrow. Another broken record. This is kind of getting old. I'm ready for warmer weather and drier weather.
I agree with you there. I mean, days upon days with shower and thunderstorm chances, with a marginal and an occasional slight risk of severe, just to make things a little interesting. Ready for a change.
Absolutely. So just a quick breakdown of what we're going to be discussing. There's a risk for severe weather tomorrow. We're going to break it down, give you an in-depth analysis, as we usually do here at Ohio's News Center. We'll discuss outlook maps that have been updated, temperatures, instability, what the radar might look like tomorrow evening, so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's get going here. First things first, headlines about the severe potential for tomorrow. A strong cold front will be moving into the area tomorrow afternoon and evening. There's a marginal to slight risk of severe weather with all hazards of severe weather possible. And we're going to talk about there's still some uncertainty out there, and Ken and I will discuss what that could mean for the potential for severe weather as we move along. Starting off with the Storm Prediction Center thunderstorm outlook for tomorrow, Thursday, May 12th, 2016. Here's a look at the Ohio News and Weather coverage area. We'll break down Ken's area here momentarily. Just to give you a general breakdown, the lightest of greens, which is across the far eastern parts of our coverage area, this is just where general thunderstorms can be expected. Brief downpours, lightning, winds to 40 miles per hour, maybe some pea-sized hail. We jump into the dark green. This is the marginal risk zone, eastern Ohio I-77 corridor, and also northwestern parts of the area, northeastern Indiana, parts of east central Indiana. Just an isolated severe thunderstorm is possible there. You could see an isolated storm, maybe one or two go severe, nothing of major significance. Into the yellow zone, this is where the best potential for severe weather exists for tomorrow, a slight risk of severe weather. Not necessarily unheard of for this time of the year or for this part of the country, but it is there across a good chunk of Ohio and parts of eastern Indiana. And our risk assessor giving us a 2 for tornadoes, which is on the low side. Flooding at a 2, that could increase because we've had some heavy rains in some areas over the last couple of days, so stay tuned for that. Large hail at a 2 as well for low. Biggest threat tomorrow, damaging winds at a 3 for elevated. There could be some reason why we bumped this up to a 3. There could be some areas where there could be some more organized wind potential, but overall coverage tomorrow is expected to be scattered. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ken with a look at his region for tomorrow. And Ken, kind of the same concept, kind of going from west to east, the greater potential to the west, lesser potential to the east.
Exactly. And basically, to break it down real quick, if you are west of Interstate 77, you are in a higher potential for severe storms. And if you are east of 77, from the looks of it, looking at what I have here, if you are in Muskingum, Western Morgan, Perry, most of Athens, Hawking, most of Meigs, Gallia, Jackson in Ohio, and Vinton County in Ohio, you are under a slight risk of severe thunderstorms tomorrow. If you are in Guernsey County and Noble County and western part of Monroe County, most of Washington County, Wood County, Work County, Jackson County, West Virginia, Roane County, and most of Calhoun County, West Virginia, you're under a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms. The rest of our coverage area is under just a risk of general thunderstorms. But the thing about this to remember is that there is a 25-mile margin of error with the Storm Prediction Center risk zones, and that works both ways. We could shave the slate back 25 miles, or we can move it up 25 miles. Same with every other risk zone. So basically, when it's this close, I would argue that the entire coverage area needs to be weather aware tomorrow.
That's a very good point, Ken. And just to break something else down for you, the risk assessor for the Middle Ohio Valley weather update is the same for right now as it is over on Ohio News and Weather. Tornadoes at a 2 for low, flooding at a 2 on the low side, which that may change, seeing as how there's been a lot of heavy rain. And the forecast discussion for the National Reserve from Charleston discusses just that. There could be, we'll have to watch for some training of cells tomorrow for some water problems. Large hail at a 2 and damaging wind potential at a 3, which is on the elevated side. Again, as of right now, coverage is expected to remain scattered. However, we'll have to watch the evolution of tomorrow and see what happens. Now, jumping into what the radar may look like tomorrow afternoon, This is from the NAM model. This is the more aggressive of the models for tomorrow afternoon. There are some models which we will not show that are kind of struggling to get the convection going, and that kind of stems from some storms that are currently out across Indiana and Illinois, which we do not currently have the time to discuss, but those may have an impact if we get things like cloud cover to linger longer than expected tomorrow. That could hinder the severe weather threat. But nevertheless, here's the NAM model. Tomorrow afternoon, some showers and storms get going in east central Ohio, south central Ohio as well, Logan down to Chillicothe over to New Lexington. Those are kind of out by themselves. We'll have to see how strong they can get in going. But Ken, as we head into tomorrow evening, we take a look at that on the NAM model, and things are a little bit more interesting. There's a lot of multicellular thunderstorms there, perhaps lines as well. We'll have to see how that impacts the region. Could definitely bring that enhanced risk for, I'm not saying enhanced risk, but a little bit higher threat for damaging winds than anything else.
And yes, and that is something we do have to watch. We have to watch the morning convection, see if anything comes through in the morning. We also have to keep in mind that when we look at these models, to not necessarily look at the exact placement of any showers or thunderstorms, but basically look at the shape and the size and the nature of these storms as they are forming. And that's the type of stuff we should expect to get based on that model. Now, I believe this model here has handled the severe storms as of late fairly well. So when we're looking at this and we're looking into the evening now, I'm looking at hour 27 right now, which would take us to 5 p.m. when southeast Ohio is getting showers and thunderstorms. Move it up another 3 hours, and now they're in West Virginia. And then overnight, Thursday into Friday, as the front comes through, you'll have one more push of heavy rain, perhaps. Those could also have some embedded thunderstorms in there too. So we can't necessarily say the severe threat is over once that first line pushes through. We have to wait for many variables to determine how exactly this is going to shake out. And there's a reason why there's so much uncertainty.
It's a very good point, Ken. And in terms of that uncertainty, I want to show you now the temperatures for tomorrow afternoon. Again, this is off the NAM model. Ken, I'm seeing some 80s here, and depending on morning convection, we may not get to 80, and in fact, some of us may struggle to get into the upper 70s tomorrow, depending on how things evolve and how things play out.
I think 80 is pushing it for most at this point. We have to consider cloud cover. We have to consider winds that might be a factor as well. Now, this model here wants to push the southwest winds into Ohio and western West Virginia. Like I'm looking at 18Z here tomorrow, which is 2 p.m. They want to put 80-degree temperatures all throughout Kentucky and then like filter them throughout western Ohio. I don't know if that's going to happen. If you take it to 21Z, they have 86 degrees for Huntington, 85 for Charleston, 79 for Parkersburg. I can buy the 79 for Parkersburg, but I don't see middle to upper 80s for the I-64 corridor. I'm just not seeing that happen.
Yeah, and again, I generally think tomorrow, lower 70s the further north you go towards Lake Erie, and then as you push down to southern Ohio, West Virginia, maybe a few 80s, and I don't think it's going to be widespread at that. Now, what's interesting is I'm going to jump to the dew point now. And Ken, dew point's a very good measure of how much instability we could get. I'm seeing on the NAM model some potential for low 70s dew points. If that materializes, a decent threat for severe weather is very much possible.
Yes, and I think dew point is a much more valid measure than even temperature. And I don't necessarily see the dew point following the same trends as the temperature. Come 18Z, we're seeing 70 dew point in Athens, 71 in Huntington, 68 in Parkersburg. If we focus west, we have 69 in Chillicothe, 68 in Cincinnati, and mid to upper 60s throughout much of Ohio and West Virginia. Even going to 21Z, we're still seeing upper 60s for dew points. That is fuel for severe thunderstorms if other ingredients come together.
Absolutely, that's a good point. And speaking of other ingredients, I'm now going to turn over to instability, or otherwise known as CAPE. For those of you that aren't sure what that stands for, it's a weather term that we use here. It's called convective available potential energy. Now, you see the scale down here below. Grays are 500s, lighter blues are 1,000. Jump up to yellow, it's 2,000. Once we get over 1,000, the potential for severe weather begins to be monitored. Once we get up to 2,500, 3,000, the risk starts to increase. And if we get to 4,000 or above, that's the beginning where we start to look at where we would possibly consider that extreme instability. Looking at 21Z tomorrow, 18 to 21Z, really kind of the main time frame tomorrow afternoon, early evening. And the instability, there are some pockets across both of our coverage areas really that are over 3,000, and there's even a couple pockets over 4,000. So that is, again, we'll have to see how that materializes, but if that materializes tomorrow afternoon, very good chance we could see some decent severe weather.
I would say the focus line here is U.S. Route 22.
Yep.
South of U.S. Route 22 would probably be the best potential for severe thunderstorms. That doesn't exclude the rest of Ohio or eastern Indiana or West Virginia, but I'm seriously thinking that south of US 22 is your best bet. Your CAPE values are 3,000 to 4,000. I've come up with an analogy here to help you understand this a little better too. Superman has a cape, helps him fly. Well, thunderstorms also need cape to help them fly as well. The more cape you have, the better. We have 4,000 cape here in Lawrence County, Scioto County, and there's like maybe even a pocket of 4,000 right in Hocking, Vinton, Meigs, and Athens counties as well. Now again, these aren't necessarily exact locations, but it's a general feel for how the atmosphere is going to work tomorrow. So southern Ohio, south of US 22, as well as all of our West Virginia counties, this is the focal point, I do believe. So if we're going to see development of severe thunderstorms, it will probably be mostly south of US 22.
Thank you for that good point. Also, one thing I want to point out, north of I-70, there is a pocket of decent instability as well. We'll have to see how that all pans out. And really, the entire coverage area of both areas is at least at 1,000 CAPE tomorrow, so at least a good chance for thunderstorms. One last big thing I want to look at, we've got a couple minutes here. We're going to look at the lifted index, and we look at the lifted index, it gives us a good idea. We need lift for thunderstorms, just like Superman needs that cape to fly. We need something to get the thunderstorms to be able to grow, and based on what we're looking at tomorrow, there's potential for double-digit negative numbers, which, by the way, to help you understand this, here's the scale at the bottom here. Anything below to the left of that -4, we start to get a little bit, we watch for severe weather potential. With double-digit negatives, that's basically twice the lift that we would need for thunderstorms to really get going.
Yes, so you have the cape, you have the lift. All you really need is the trigger. Like Superman needs a bad event to go to help save people. A thunderstorm needs some sort of trigger to get them going, because we can have all of this in place. We can have the lifted index in place, we can have the cape in place, we can have the proper dew points, we can have the proper moisture, but it's going to take something to trigger these thunderstorms. I'm looking here at the scale of lifted index at 18Z tomorrow. Again, 2 p.m. tomorrow. I am looking at Lawrence County. I am looking at Scioto County. I am looking at Pike County. Again, not necessarily where everything's going to occur, but a general idea of how the atmosphere is going to work. And based on this scale, we're seeing values between -10 and -12. You know, and as Nick said, you need a -4 for serious monitoring to go on. We're having double-digit negatives. Anytime you have a negative lifted index, it needs to be washed, but especially when you have all of these other ingredients together. So we're going to keep monitoring that. We're going to keep looking at the models. We're going to have a refined opinion on this tomorrow morning, but we're just keeping you ahead of the storm right now. Nick?
All right, thank you for that, Ken.